And this is a space where everything changes. Innovation, engagement, performance, and profit increase substantially at level 4. And occasionally we can reach level 5 with a limitless mindset and a bounded culture. And this is where anything is possible. This is where we have highly innovative teams working day and night on some amazing innovations for humanity. So right now, it is more important than ever before that we move to level 4 and occasionally level 5 in order to get through this pandemic and to thrive in the post-pandemic world.
Merci beaucoup à professeur Vladka Lupic qui expliquait tout à l'heure ce qu'elle appelle les 5 niveaux donc de Emergent Leadership Model, le modèle du leadership émergent. Et c'est donc un modèle, on parlait tout à l'heure au début que c'était une théoricienne. Elle en a d'ailleurs fait tout un livre que vous pouvez retrouver en ligne et vous procurer. Et elle attire surtout l'attention sur le 4e niveau. Je ne pourrais pas aller sur tous ces niveaux pour des raisons de temps, mais le 4e niveau où il y a plus d'engagement donc entre les employeurs et les employés, plus d'inclusion aussi, plus de collaboration, où il n'est plus question ici de juste être un leader qui est au-dessus de tout et les autres sont des subalternes, mais il faut leur donner plutôt l'impression qu'ils ont leur part à jouer, qu'ils ont leur partition à jouer, et ainsi faire de la diversité finalement des ressources humaines quelque chose, une seule entité qui est plus performante parce que tout le monde s'y sent plus à l'aise et peut notamment participer et apporter sa pierre à l'édifice. My second question, but the first one for Valerie Messing-Cunningham is this one. From an autocratic leadership to a more collaborative and people-oriented management, how has leadership changed over the years?
Thank you so much, Remy, for that question, and it is a pleasure to be with this panel today. That is a very, very good question because it is live right now. This change and this shift is real. Pre-pandemic, it was probably leaders' focus was all around the business and really, you know, what are the numbers and how do we get there? Post-pandemic, this whole thing around collaboration is so important. You're building a new culture, and a culture that's not necessarily not focused in on performance and metrics and being successful, but really focusing in on the people and really understanding how the people are feeling, how are they looking to collaborate and work together. This whole notion of balancing work, life, and family life, being remote, these are not new concepts, but they were so pronounced during this pandemic. And leaders of today are really going to have to shift the mindset to really focusing in on the people and really understanding that their most valuable assets are their human capital, and they have to pay more attention to that. So what does that mean? What that means is you're going to have a lot more empathy. You're really going to need to be a little vulnerable as leaders these days, because to connect with people is going to be so much more important. Communication becomes one of the key pinnacles of this entire process going forward as a leader. You have to be very open for all communications, and it has to be something that is steady on a regular basis. And leaders of today, which are really leaders of tomorrow, are really going to have to step up and understand that connecting to people, we all know we want to see each other real time, but obviously the pandemic showed that we can still stay connected. It has to be intentional. And leaders of today and tomorrow are going to have to be very intentional about what they do and how they do it in order to thrive in this new world, which is really today. And now is all that matters.
Il y a donc Valérie Mason-Cunningham qui expliquait, en allant aussi dans le même sens que le professeur Lupic, en parlant notamment de collaboration, mais aussi de capital humain, qui sont deux mots-clés. Et elle attire surtout l'attention ici sur le fait que les chefs d'entreprise doivent vraiment faire du capital humain la clé et au centre de leurs préoccupations. Et cela exige aussi de l'empathie de la part de ces leaders. Mais qui dit empathie dit ouverture, dit aussi communication. Et quelque part, le leader devra sacrifier un peu quelque chose de son estime de soi, parce que cela évidemment appelle une sorte de vulnérabilité de la part du leader. Mais l'objectif étant évidemment d'instaurer la collaboration. Avant de passer la parole ensuite à Nadia, je poserai la première question en français à Olivier Ndjamfa. On sait que la technologie a une part importante à jouer dans tout ce processus-là. Et ma question, c'est pourquoi la technologie occupe-t-elle cette place-là, si importante dans le leadership aujourd'hui, et quels sont les changements de comportement à opérer pour que les organisations finalement puissent en bénéficier?
Oui, merci de m'avoir aujourd'hui. Je suis ravi de pouvoir intervenir sur la technologie, donc qui est ma passion et là où j'exerce le plus de mon temps. Tout d'abord, je pense que même si la technologie est capitale, il faut l'associer avec deux autres facteurs, le facteur humain, ce dont parlent Valérie et Vladka, et le facteur organisation. En anglais, on dirait people, the process and technology. Et donc, ne jamais penser que la technologie va tout résoudre tout seul si on ne l'associe pas à ces deux autres facteurs. Le deuxième point que je voudrais signaler, c'est qu'effectivement, le leader, il doit d'abord laisser sa vision se déployer, son imagination aller aussi loin qu'elle peut, et ensuite s'appuyer au maximum sur la technologie pour la réaliser. Il n'y a pas de limite aujourd'hui à la technologie. Aucun leader peut se dire, bon, je pense que ça ne le fera pas. Si ça le fera, il faut laisser aller vraiment toutes ces idées. Et d'ailleurs, si au bout, vous ne trouvez pas une technologie qui le fait, eh bien, vous l'inventez et ça vous devient un nouveau business. Donc, la technologie, c'est au cœur de tout ça. Et c'est les deux points que je voulais soulever pour démarrer.
Thank you, Olivier. So to the question, why is technology such a big component in leadership today, and what behavioral changes will need to happen for organizations to benefit from it? Olivier said, first of all, technology is his passion, and technology alone cannot work. You need to associate people, process to technology in order for it to be really efficient. And the leader needs to have vision. And if you don't have the technology you need, invent what you need. So this brings me to my first question, which will be directed to Ram Castillo. Ram, social media is allowing people and organizations to position themselves as leaders and experts in their industries. Why is this a real game changer?
Well, thank you so much for that, Nadia. Well, we don't have to look far to see the impact of social media. We're constantly wired in, and the short answer is that social media is where the current dominant attention is. It's no longer at the hands of large traditional media. Everyone has a phone in their pocket and in their hand constantly. And so to start from an ecosystem point of view, I believe that people and organizations all have a brand. It already exists. Now, whether or not we use personal brand or organizational branding to influence and to broadcast our mission, our vision, our values, that's a whole other thing, but it already exists. So how does this occur? Well, brand is simply put what people attach meaning to around your identity. So as leaders, people already have an opinion about us. There's three areas to highlight. Number one, there's personality. So we can be connected and we favor leaders or organizations, businesses, because they're an extension of our personality, which includes our values, what we stand for, what we stand against. The second bit is around credibility when it comes to branding. And then of course there's reputation. So for added context, it's not necessarily that the brands that are the best are the brands that win. It's actually the brands that are the best known, which ties back into social media as a tool to distribute and to carve a position as a leader in the marketplace that exists. So that's how I look at social media. It's a tool to distribute communication, and it's most commonly known as content. And then when we look at the customer experience or the human experience, there is a relationship that we have with people. And as leaders, it's usually starting from almost like a awareness point of view, and then we consider, and then we commit further. So in short, you know, social media is now equaling the playing field to build relationships, to build brand, and therefore we are able to position ourselves as leaders in a way that we just have never been able to before. And there's so many platforms out there. You know, we don't have to go far. There's traditional ones now are the Facebooks, the YouTube, the LinkedIns and Instagrams. But now there's so much more. There's Clubhouse. I don't know if any of you have heard Clubhouse. And then there's now we're moving into blockchain technology, where there's new social media platforms now called BitClout. So we have to look at this as digital real estate. So that's how I look at social media.
Smartphone, hein, c'est cet outil que finalement nous tous nous avons entre nos mains, le téléphone portable. Et aujourd'hui, avec lui, les réseaux sociaux, ça a complètement changé la façon dont les choses sont faites, la façon dont les liens sont tissés, la façon d'agrandir son réseau, la façon aussi de finalement soigner son image. Et donc, RAM en parle comme étant un outil finalement au quotidien qui est une superbe opportunité pour notamment construire donc notre notoriété, ce qu'il appelle le brand. Et ceci passe notamment par aussi en faire un instrument finalement de positionnement, en construisant un réseau en ligne, comme je le disais, mais aussi, pourquoi pas, en instaurant des relations avec les différents réseaux sociaux qui permettent de finalement devenir un ami, d'avoir une très bonne relation avec quelqu'un qui est à des milliers de kilomètres de vous, sans forcément que vous voyez. I will now begin the second round of questions, and going back to Professor Vlatka Lupic. From setting rules to establishing principles, from old habits to a more engaging style of leadership, what can we learn from the legacies of the 20th century corporation, and what are the keys to transformation?
Well, thank you. It's a very interesting question. In terms of individual leaders, what we need from leaders right now, and Valerie mentioned some of the key points as well, is that we need a clear way forward from leaders. This is what creates resilience for employees. We need trust, stability, hope, compassion, direction, authenticity, purpose, and so on. So that's on the individual level from leaders. But if we look into the legacies from the 20th century organizations, we could see what do we have from this legacy is hierarchical command and control from, in many cases, standardization, specialization, bureaucratic organizations. That worked well in the first industrial revolution, but it is very detrimental for performance in modern organizations, which are largely comprised of knowledge workers who want autonomy, purpose, freedom to experiment with ideas. And we know younger generations also want that freedom, they want purpose. So this is not going to work. So we need to move away from silos, and we need to understand we need to lead organizations as living organisms where it is understood how everything is interconnected. So a problem in one area of organization, if you have a problem with the culture or strategy or the skills and motivation of people or technology resources, that will impact performance of the entire organization. And in this world now where everything is changing, the human consciousness is shifting as well. Those old legacies and levels 1, 2, 3 organizations will not be tolerated anymore. So they will have to shift to level 4 and transform, or they will not survive.
Thank you, Vlatka. Alors, à la question de savoir quel est l'héritage que nous avons reçu des entreprises du XXe siècle et quelles sont les clés pour une transformation, professeur Lupic nous répond que les entreprises du XXe siècle étaient basées sur la bureaucratie, la spécialisation, les silos, et la hiérarchisation. Aujourd'hui, elles ne peuvent plus fonctionner comme ça. Nous sommes dans un nouveau paradigme. Nous avons maintenant des générations qui ont besoin de liberté, liberté de penser, de s'exprimer, liberté d'avoir des buts, des projets. Il faut que le management se transforme et s'il ne s'adapte pas, si on n'est plus dans l'interconnexion, si on ne regarde pas l'entreprise comme un organisme vivant où tout est interconnecté, alors ces entreprises-là ne pourront pas survivre. Thank you, Vladka. So this brings me to my second question to you, Valerie Mason-Cunningham. How has the modern remote working environment impacted the current leadership culture?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Nadia. I mentioned a little bit of it in my my previous response, but I will build upon it. What it has done is it really has forced leaders now to take inventory of what's important. And really the soft skill leadership, meaning those of collaboration, empathy, communication, flexibility, are all now the most important skills of a leader, and especially in this remote environment. And so why do I say that? Priorities like checking in for mental health and physical health reasons is one aspect of it. And that shows empathy from the leader that they care about their people. And it's important to take stock on how people are feeling, because in this particular crisis, some people may not have anybody in the home with them, all alone all the time. That can be a very big strain on the mental health of an individual. And so this notion of really focusing in on these soft skills are going to be extremely important both now and going forward. So again, these notions of people management, and that being now your most valuable asset in this time of crisis that we're in, really is a gift. It's really been a gift and an opportunity. And as leaders, you need to look at that, because what you're doing is you're making better connections with your people. You're really getting inside of what's working and what's not working. And you also need to start to facilitate conversations where innovation really starts to be very much alive. It's when people's mental and physical health and the notion of feeling like they are a part of the team starts to generate the creativity in people that can bring even more power to what the business is looking for. And these are just on the tip of the iceberg, some of extraordinary things of a mind shift of a leader, both today and tomorrow.
Donc, en gros, la question, c'était comment le travail a impacté ou a changé la culture du management ou du leadership. Et Madame Valérie Mason-Cunningham expliquait que cela a permis surtout aux leaders et poser des questions, de se remettre en question et de faire le point sur leurs priorités, mais aussi sur les éléments les plus importants finalement. Qu'est-ce qui est le plus important et doit faire face à cette nouvelle réalité. Et puis ensuite, elle rappelait aussi qu'elle avait eu à répondre à cette question dans sa première interrogation. Cela me permet d'aller directement à Olivier Njamfa. And I will ask this question to you in English. We know that the modern remote working is a new reality, but the question is, do organizations have the right technology in place to support?
Okay, so in English or in French? En français.
In English, please,
okay,
so
fine.
that we can.
Okay, fine. So we can switch. So yes, of course. My answer will be in 3 points. The first one is it depends of organization. They don't have all the right technology. But first, any leader must make sure that the people in the organization have at least the same level of technology they're using at home. We have been starting using email, chat, and video at home before bringing it to the companies. So make sure that there is no rupture. There is no break in technology with someone using something at home and coming to the work, first thing. The second thing, it's companies should always benchmark their technology they're using. Benchmarking against direct competition, because sometimes you're going to check a product, they have a better product like us, it's cheaper, they're going faster. Look behind, there is technology involved. You should go and have a close look at what type of technology your competitor is using to manufacture the product, to design the product, etc. But don't stay only benchmarking in your same sector. You should go benchmark outside your sector. If you're a bank, sometimes have a look at what's been doing in the public sector. You're going to be amazed and pick up some ideas to improve your own technology. Last point, it's as you hear anything about AI, jump on it. This is the future. Many things is coming out there. Don't be scared. Your organization going to be much faster if they use AI.
Merci Olivier. So to the question, à la question, est-ce que les organisations, les entreprises aujourd'hui ont la bonne technologie pour soutenir la nouvelle réalité qui est le travail à domicile? La réponse d'Olivier Ndjamfa est qu'il faut déjà s'assurer que la même technologie que les gens utilisent chez eux est celle qu'ils vont pouvoir utiliser aussi dans leur cadre professionnel. Ensuite, il faut comparer avec non seulement la concurrence, mais tous les secteurs d'activité, quelles sont les technologies qui sont utilisées aux gens d'être performants. Et enfin, n'hésitez pas à aller regarder chaque fois que vous entendez parler d'intelligence artificielle parce qu'il y a énormément de solutions qui vont nous arriver venant de l'intelligence artificielle. This brings me to you, Ram, and I would like to ask you, in the current remote working climate that has affected the creative process between leaders and their teams, how much and what can be done to keep performing?
Well, remote-based working is something that I find incredibly exciting because of the ability to perform better, not worse. So firstly, before I unpack that, leaders need to articulate, first of all, what their mission and vision is very clearly. And Valerie sort of alluded to that. I love this by Simon Sinek. Many might know him. He's the author of Start With Why and Leaders Eat Last. Recently, he posted about an analogy, and I'll just share it quickly with you. And he said that a car doesn't exist just so we can put petrol in it. A car exists to take us to a place that's greater, a destination. Just so as a business or an organization exists, not just to make money. It needs money, just like as a car needs petrol, but it exists for something greater as well, to move humanity forward, to fulfill a mission or a purpose greater than the money making. So we need to communicate what our version of a better world looks like as a leader, to rally the behavior towards contributing to that change. So that's number one. The second aspect is for leaders to define the expected outcomes for their team. So, you know, to show their teams what good looks like. So this is critical because when we look at remote, it is a way of working that can work for us. And by that, I mean, you know, we need to firstly understand that the world is already going this way. The gig economy, the freelance market, we are now at an intersection with which it will be the dominant way of working. I mean, put it this way, look at the creative process. I alluded to the question here. How can we box in creativity within a 9-to-5 or a 9-to-6 framework? We can't. We are humans that have a full experience that have many different aspects of our lives as well. We might come up with an innovative idea in the middle of the night. So how are we meant to capture that? Do we suppress that? Sometimes, often, that we need to be flexible to that. And people are naturally gravitating towards this because we are our optimum in this environment. And so we need to be clear on the roles, the responsibilities, and clear KPIs, and of course to lead by example. But the third aspect, and I'll end with this, it's the most critical. We need to support our team as leaders and our people with the tools to succeed and to create processes. We need to empower them, first of all. We need to give them permission to operate in any capacity that they want within our business objectives. So what I mean by that is, for example, I had the honor of interviewing Matt Mullenweg. He's the founder of WordPress. Now, many might know WordPress. It is currently powering over 35% of the internet on the WordPress platform. Matt Mullenweg's company is Automattic, and WordPress is one of 11, I believe, of his companies. And he has 1,500 plus employees. And he said, because I said to him, how do you make this work? You've got 1,500 employees. They work anywhere in the world. No one has an office, a set office. And he said, well, we measure based on outcomes. However, they arrive at those outcomes within the 1 week or 2 week task that they are tasked to do is up to them, as long as they deliver on the outcome. So it goes back to ensuring we are being clear as to what's expected by our team and supporting them with tools. So one I'll give for everyone, Miro.com. Miro is a whiteboarding tool where you can use on your browser an infinite canvas. It's a digital one, but you can get Post-its, you can get your team members, your clients, and you can brainstorm, or you can use it in many ways. But just look at it as an infinite wall. Like, wow, we can contribute in ways and access a digital whiteboard, for example. There's Google for Business, there's Dropbox, there's Slack. There's so many tools out there. For me, it's an exciting time. And I think, remote-based working is a positive thing to create and to innovate in a way with no barriers, no physical barriers, no time barriers. And so that's how I feel that we can perform better. We need to encourage people to use tools and processes that amplify their human access to perform better, to create, because, it's not weird anymore that, we're more forgiving. We're on Zoom all the time. We hear babies crying. We see dogs walking past. Like, this is our unique, authentic, real selves. So I think that's the way to go. I think we're going to a hybrid method. Yeah, we'll go back to physical spaces, but we need to support with a digital transformation to enable the option to operate in a digital landscape.
Quelle est notre mission et quelle est notre vision? Où voulons-nous aller? Et Ram explique en fait que ce travail finalement à distance, depuis la maison, etc., nous exige ou attend des leaders de se poser cette question et donc de définir finalement une vision claire d'où l'entreprise veut aller et où le chef veut mener ses troupes. Qu'attendez-vous de vos équipes qui travaillent à domicile? Il faut leur donner des objectifs précis, mais il ne suffit pas de leur donner des objectifs, il faut leur donner des outils et les moyens de pouvoir atteindre leurs objectifs. Il a par exemple pris un exemple dont je citerai uniquement ici, c'est Slack. Et Slack qui permet par exemple aux équipes de travailler en commun plus rapidement, de façon plus efficiente. Et donc, il y a beaucoup plus d'autres outils. Et tout cela fait partie de ce changement qu'il faut embrasser, mais embrasser avec